Episode 4 of the Babysitters Club TV show is Marianne Saves the Day. And I really liked the last 5 minutes or so of the show. I really liked the ending, but I wasn't a huge fan of the rest of the episode. The episode is not very much based on the book. It's sort of like episode number 2. They took some ideas from the book, but they didn't really follow the book. They sort of did their own thing. And, it makes me wonder about the series in general, because we've been seeing this trend of, not doing everything in the book. It makes me wonder, are the books too long to fit into, like, a 20-minute episode? That could be it, because it feels like, just out of hand, a third of each book is just dismissed. Now, to be fair, these books generally tend to have, like, a lot of unnecessary babysitting chapters, so I could understand leaving things out. But it felt like maybe this episode cut out too much of the book, considering that this is a really, really good book, because it really dives deep into Marianne's character. Whereas I feel like the Stacy episode, the one before it, really dove deep into Stacy's character and what's going on with her life. Whereas this one, it didn't feel like we were given way too much that was new information. The new thing we learned about Marianne is that she's a big fat crybaby and she cries all the time. And so her friends were like criticizing her at a babysitters club meeting when she gets really timid talking to a client, and they're like, "Come on, Marianne, you need to stand up for yourself. Come on, Marianne, you can't let other people tell you what to do all the time." And Marianne's like, "But you're telling me what to do. Don't let people tell you what to do. Do what I say." And Marianne just started crying, and yeah, I don't know. I feel like I think that worked better in the book and in the graphic novels where Marianne cries and runs away. Whereas in the episode, it seems to come out of nowhere because Marianne's dealt with some pretty heavy stuff in previous episodes. Not a tear to be seen. So it sort of felt like, well, this is a new, different aspect to her personality, which doesn't quite fit with the personality we saw in previous episodes. Whereas in the books, it was very well established that Marianne is a big fat crybaby. And the surprise in book number 4, the big surprise is that Marianne doesn't like dressing like a baby. She doesn't like having her hair in braids. And that was sort of the new big aspect to her personality in the book. Whereas in the episode, the new thing is, oh, she's actually kind of a crybaby and unconfident, uncomfortable. So you saw a bit more of her father. And I think I like her father better. He was more awkward in this episode, whereas previously he was just sort of the mean, bossy, controlling guy, but here he seems more awkward. He's not as, like, awkward and nerdy as I thought he would be based on the book, but that's fine. He was totally okay. Like I said, I liked the last 5 minutes, so I especially liked him at the end of the book where he's like, "Marianne, of course you can change your hair." Because I never really liked how the book played it, where Mr. Spear is this really mean, strict person. And then at the end, he finally relents and is nice. That makes for a good storyline, but I kind of prefer what they did in the episode, where he's not kind of strict. He's just this guy who's trying his hardest and has no idea what to do raising a teenage daughter. So I kind of like that. So I kind of like it. I prefer that. So in the book, the scenes with her dad, there are like 2 or 3 scenes with her dad, and they play out differently. It's more like Marianne timidly tries to ask her dad about changing her hair, but she asks at the wrong time. Dad's in a terrible mood, and he sort of rejects her. And those were high drama scenes. Whereas in this one, it was more like Dad was just sort of awkward and confused. So Dad tries to help Marianne by calling all of her friends' moms and basically tattletaling on their daughters. "Hey, your daughters were mean to Marianne tonight." So at school, Marianne's friends are mad at her, which is great. That works fine. Except in the book. In the book, the club has a huge fight, and that was awesome. I actually loved it. I love seeing the girls scream and yell at each other over all sorts of different things. And it was sort of like drama that was building up for a while. Because, like, even back in book number 1, Claudia was stealing people's jobs. And then, in book 3, Stacy's always bragging about New York. And Christy's always bossy. But, so that was basically the core of their big fight in this book. But in the episode, it's just Marianne's dad tattletaled on them, and so they got grounded. And so they're kind of mad for a little bit. I think it was better in the book, where it's just knockdown, drag out, shouting so bad that Mimi comes from upstairs to see what's going on. So I would have preferred if we had a more serious fight, although what was it? It was episode 2 or episode 3 where they sort of had the fight between Marianne and Christy, and so that was taken like from this book as part of this fight of that book, and then put in another episode. So they couldn't like repeat it. So that obviously that's why they didn't repeat the fight. So that's why the fight is more toned down. I still would have liked seeing the girls scream and shout at each other. That would have been some great acting. I think it would have been good. So Marianne sits in a new spot where she meets her friend Dawn, and I don't know. I'm not so sure about Dawn. I thought Dawn was kind of strange because Dawn leads into this thing. She's like, I'm from California, which she is. And so that means they eat like green goo and they go to these Jupiter Scorpio moon sharings. I've never heard of this before. It just completely confused me. So it's like a 5-minute block where it's like, what is going on? So all these women get together and they hold hands and they talk about the stars or stuff like that. And it's the Morbid Destiny, Mrs. Porter, the woman who lives next door to Watson. Apparently she's a real life witch. That was weird. And Marianne gets very shy when they ask her to stand up and talk. And then Marianne runs away, and she says, oh, Dawn, do you hate me just like my friends hate me because I'm too shy and stuff? And Dawn's like, no, it's cool. It's who you are. No big deal. And that was nice. I like that. I like that. It was sort of foreshadowing for the ending where her dad does the same thing. He's like, it's okay. You be who you are. I don't really care. That was sort of the theme of the episode, is being who you are. And that it was very smart how they tied that theme into the child. So in the book, it's Jenny Prezioso, who's very girly and likes to get dressed up, and she's 4 years old. But here in the episode, it was a girl named Bailey, who used to be a boy. And Marianne is sort of surprised to learn this information, but she decides it's okay. And so that was the first babysitting job with Bailey. Also, another thing that gets the club members mad at Marianne is because Mrs. Del Vecchio asks for Marianne specifically because, she's co-workers with Marianne's dad, which makes total sense. But that's something new. In the book, it was Claudia who was being the job hog, like I said earlier. So I guess it makes sense for them to be mad at Marianne about that, kind of, but then it kind of doesn't, because we addressed this in an earlier episode. Watson and Christy want Christy to babysit because they know her personally, and that makes sense. And, Mrs. Johansson wants Stacy to babysit her kid because Stacy is her child's favorite sitter. It makes sense. It makes sense for, parents to kind of want a specific sitter who their child is bonded with. So that's why Mrs. Del Vecchio wants Marianne to babysit Bailey. And so the second time Marianne babysits Bailey, Bailey is very sick and is taken to the hospital. Bailey has a fever of 104, and Bailey gets taken to the hospital. And then these, two super rude doctors, one's a doctor and one's a nurse, and they keep using the wrong pronouns to refer to Bailey. And Marianne rightly points out, can you not take a look at Bailey? Why are you just looking at the chart and not even looking at this child who's dying in front of you? So Marianne gives a big speech about trans rights, which was good, and her father overhears, and that's sort of what inspires him to realize Marianne's grown up. She's acting like her mother. I'm so proud of her. And he tells all the neighborhood parents about it, and the neighborhood parents are like, yay, yay for Marianne. She saves the day. I have to say, between this and the big parent meeting of the last episode, these parents are really, really involved in their kids' lives. My gosh. I mean, my 6th grader would not want me to be that involved in her life. I can tell you that. If I called the mothers of all of my kids' friends, she would hate me forever. But it still made for a happy ending. So overall, like I said, I thought it was an okay episode. There was this really confusing part. The stuff with Dawn confused me. I thought that was really weird and confusing. I didn't get it. Maybe it's a reference to like a movie or something I haven't seen. But the last 5 or so minutes of the episode were excellent. Marianne gives a big speech. Her father is awesome. Her friends like her again, and there's this really cool song, Marianne, Marianne, Marianne. So I really like the Marianne song too. And Marianne kind of makes up with Christy. There's a little bit of hesitancy there, and I assume we're going to go into that in episode number 5, where Dawn joins the Babysitters Club, and Dawn and Christy have a little bit of tension there. So I think that's why they didn't fully resolve the tension with Christy at the end of this episode. Okay, so those are my thoughts. Thanks for watching.